Good morning from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got a great podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by Moneyline Mac, Ryan McIntyre, who does great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. I know that he also does great work covering the West Virginia Mountaineers with regards to all sports, not just college basketball, but every single sport. He was on the coaching staff a few seasons ago over at West Virginia, so certainly need to be taking a look at the news that Jose Perez, he is now out of the fold for West Virginia. We're going to be asking him about that. We're going to be asking him where West Virginia goes from here, some of the outlooks that we could expect to see from them. On top of that, we did see bad news for Kansas with Arterio Morris out of the fold due to a not good situation, to say the least. I think that that's the most fair way of putting it. So we're going to be looking there. We're going to try to unearth a few under-the-radar teams with our good friend Ryan as well. Now he's getting set for the upcoming season as well. In segment number 1, we did see a pair of Los Angeles teams have a little bit of news. We're going to be rounding that up, and a little bit of good news with regards to the two-time transfer front as well. So we're going to be giving you guys a little bit of a roundup of college basketball news in segment number 1 from Monday. And if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my X timeline at GNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM. Naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and the other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. With regards to what we all saw in college basketball on Monday, good news on the front of Bronny James. As we know, he suffered cardiac arrest over the summertime. You just don't want to see that from anyone, but it sounds like from his father, and we all know about his father, one Mr. LeBron James, it sounds like he's trying to get out there on the court this year. Now, when that is going to be, that is anyone's guess, and we did see USC go through this with Vincent Iwuchukwu as well. It was a very similar situation. Obviously, you can never compare the two to being just completely the same, but at the same time, they do have experience with someone coming back from a traumatic event like that, to say the least. So USC, they've got, I'm sure, some of the best care humanly possible for Bronny James, a gentleman that was rated in the top 30 according to 247 Sports in the class of 2023 freshman rankings. And I mean, this would be big for USC just to be able to get him out there on the court. Many people were thinking that he was going to be a first-round draft pick. A lot of people were speculating whether or not that would be due to his talent, or teams trying to lure LeBron James to be able to play with his son for a year or two and try to be able to get LeBron James for a year. But I do think that this is going to be very big for USC, and just a really good story in general with Bronny James. Even when he is out there on the floor, I don't think that he's necessarily going to be that number 1 option with regards to USC, because USC has an absolutely loaded freshman class, and even without Bronny James, I think that they're going to be more than fine. As with USC, they did an amazing job bringing in Isaiah Collier. He is going to be a menace out there in the backcourt. Boogie Ellis is someone that averaged 15 plus points per contest last year. DJ Rodman is coming in from Washington State at 6'6". He's able to pop some threes. He's able to give you some boards. And then you got Iwuchukwu along Joshua Morgan down low to be able to man things. So even if Bronny James gives you just a little bit, that could be enough to be able to make USC that top team like we were all expecting in the Pac-12, and one of the teams that they're going to be matched up against to be able to try to be the top of the Pac-12. That'd be UCLA, who they did lose a lot from last year. They did very much go the international route, and I know that John Rothstein tweeted this out on Monday. Sounds like he's doing a little bit better. It sounds like, according to Mick Cronin, and I'm utilizing the John Rothstein tweet here to give the credit where credit is due, Cronin says, I'd rather have him at 110%. He'll be fresher for the season, but it's currently at 100%, doing limited contact in practice. Bono, he was the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year last year. Really more of a defensive-oriented player. He was able to give the team right around about 7.7 points per contest, but where he was really valuable was being able to erase shots for a UCLA defense that during the regular season was in the top 10 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 1.7 blocks, about 5.5 rebounds per game. So there's good news on that front. And then there is good news on the front of the two-time transfers being able to get waivers, as K.K. Robinson, he decided that he was going to be transferring to Little Rock. He began his career over at Texas A&M and Arkansas. He is going to be good to go for the upcoming season. That is good news for Little Rock. Now, I don't necessarily think that Little Rock is going to be going out there and lighting the world on fire, but with everything that we have been seeing here in the offseason, just seeing some of these guys being able to get a waiver and being out there on the floor, I think that is going to be massive for them and for this Little Rock team. Just any sort of explosiveness that they can get is going to be helpful as well, because they were one of those whole is greater than the sum of its parts teams the last few years, with KK Robinson comes in just having not gotten a lot of burn really with his time at Arkansas, with his time at Texas A&M either, a guy that was a former top 150 recruit, and I do think that he's got some good versatility, and if he's able to find some consistent minutes, can be able to make a little bit of an impact. But with KK Curry, I feel like this was a little bit more of an upside take, as he's coming off of a junior year at Texas A&M where he played just 18 games, was able to give the team 2 points per contest as a career, about 34% three-point shooter, at 6 feet tall, can be a nice ball handler if given the opportunity, just hasn't really been given that opportunity. So that's what we all saw in the news column of college basketball on Monday. Now let's take a look at what we're all getting out there in the Big 12 with West Virginia, Kansas, and so much more with Ryan McIntyre. He does great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, and he joins me next right here on Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
Are you ready to become a winning sports bettor? Schedule a call with SBIA to find out how their service can make you a long-term winning player. They've developed an innovative algorithm that maximizes units returned, and they are so confident in their system that they offer a money-back guarantee. Sign up by October 31st and get their MBA package at no cost until they reach 10 net units. They treat sports betting like a business. So if you want to learn how to make your sports betting dreams a reality, visit them at SBIA1.com and check them out on social media at SBIA Sports.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this man as Ryan McIntyre. He does amazing work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, taking a look at the great game of college basketball. Does really a great job on the entire college sports front. On top of that, for those that love West Virginia, he does a Ryan Rush show that is dedicated to all things West Virginia, whether that be football, basketball, if the rowing team is competing for something nationally, I'm sure that Ryan is going to be breaking that down as well. And to be able to follow our good friend Ryan over on X, that is at moneyline_Mac, Mac spelled M-A-C. And Ryan, always great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Appreciate you having me on, Greg. I had a flight today, so I was catching up on some older episodes from this last week. So all caught up on your show and looking forward to talk some hoops here because we're tipping the ball off here just a month now.
Yes, sir. We are just under 5 weeks away, but who in the heck is counting? Well, I can tell you that you're counting, and I am counting as well. So we are very much fired up for this. And with West Virginia, I think that they just wanted the season to get started because it has been a rough off season. Everything that happened with regards to now Josh Eiler taking over with the interim coaching regime, what we've seen with regards to the roster. And then we did see over the weekend now Jose Perez is out of the fold. Seemed like it was an academic thing. Didn't seem like it was anything off the court. I might have that mistaken, but felt like it came down to academics and academics alone. But regardless of what the circumstance is, him being out of the fold, I do think puts this West Virginia team in a little bit of a sticky situation. And I'm not sure how you read this, but now whether or not Raekwon Battle, whether he gets a waiver, that becomes paramount right now for West Virginia.
Completely. And I think that's what it all hinges on right now. Josh Eiler's press conference, he didn't hide from it. He said, we're waiting on that waiver. Should know something in the next 2 weeks, I believe. But yeah, no, they got to get Raekwon Battle from Montana State. He averaged 18 points a game. Obviously had a great tournament against Kansas State. Jose, things didn't work out. There's other guys on the roster, but Battle is definitely the guy that they need to get eligible. Some guys that may fill the void by committee are guys that have been in the program, Seth Wilson, Kobe Johnson. So I think they'll look internally, but the main thing, they got to get Battle eligible.
Yep, I am right there with you. And even if Battle is eligible, this also does cause for a little bit of a lack of depth with regards to West Virginia as well. And how much do you fear that that could be something that catches up with West Virginia? Because we know that the Big 12, even with the added teams, it does probably water it down just a little bit when you bring in teams like Central Florida, what have you. But I still have this conference as the toughest in all of college basketball, first through last, even with it now being at 14 schools. And I do think that it is a little bit of a conference of attrition. You have to go up against a bunch of different tempos, and just having one less body in there, I think that that alone does cause for a little bit of issue with West Virginia as well.
Completely, and it's a relatively new roster. Basically only bring back, I think, 9% of the roster from last year from a production standpoint. But the other thing that's underrated, like you said, surviving just this gauntlet, the travel isn't kind to West Virginia with all these schools being in the Midwest. You had a BYU in there. Now you got UCF and Cincinnati to get a little more regional. But, yeah, I mean, not having another depth piece is always going to wear on you in this 18-game gauntlet where you're just trying to survive around that 500 mark so that you can play in the big dance.
Oh, absolutely. As we do have Ryan McIntyre, he does absolutely amazing work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, along with the Ryan Rush Show. He is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And something else that we do need to talk about is what we're going to be getting out of Kansas, as well as with regards to the Kansas Jayhawks. They had a key loss during the weekend, as well as Arterio Morris. Bad situation. I don't want to read too much into it because you don't want to be casting stones when there's still a pending investigation, but certainly not good what was happening there. But with Kansas, I do think that this is a really interesting situation for them as well. And with regards to this Kansas team, I think that they should be able to observe this blow with Arterio Morris, but it does cause a few more question marks for them. And I do think that it could lead to Kansas having to go a little bit bigger because a lot of the reserves that Kansas do have, they are a little bit more along the post to be able to support Hunter Dickinson.
Yeah, Kansas is an interesting team. Roster-wise, they're going to be loaded. Obviously, they got all the veterans back in Harris and McCullough. Everybody well documented. They added the best portal addition probably of all time in Hunter Dickinson, KJ Adams back. But yeah, I mean, probably more size. They still got Nick Timberlake to transfer from Towson, who's an experienced guy. But like you said, with West Virginia, you don't want to be losing depth pieces in this gauntlet. And obviously, unfortunately, what happened with Arterio Morris. But I mean, they were definitely going to lean on him as a guy that they could bring off the bench and spot start, I thought. So this is definitely a loss for the Jayhawks.
Yep, it is going to be a loss for the Jacks. And where do you place them nationally? Because I do think that that's a big question with Kansas. And if you like Kansas as a top two team before this, I still think that this is not enough of a loss to where you dock them from being one of those top two teams. I personally am right there with Kansas and Duke as my top two teams in all of college basketball. I still do have them there. But I think that this is more or less something that you want to see if there's an injury that happens a little bit later on down the line, because that's when things start to spiral. Without Arterio Morris in the fold, it hurts, but I still think that they've got more than enough pieces, especially with bringing in someone like a Nicholas Timberlake from Towson, who is a very good sharpshooter. You do lose a little bit of versatility with Morris, but I still think that this team is fine. But I do think that it leads to concern if something else happens down the line.
They're still my preseason number one. They got arguably the best point guard in the country from a defensive run your team standpoint. McCullough's a veteran glue guy, came back for one reason, to win a national championship. And then obviously Hunter Dickinson, arguably the best, like I said, the best transfer portal addition. And you could make the argument, too, they might have the best coach in the country in Bill Self. So from a standpoint of it could hurt them in the long run, yes. But from preseason standpoint, the Morris subtraction, I agree with you. It doesn't knock them off that one seed line headed into a 23-24 season.
Total agreement with you there. As we do have Ryan McIntyre does great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And when it comes to the landscape of the Big 12, I do think that it is an interesting one to take a look at, because I think that it's really hard to not have a team not named Kansas at number one, but obviously the additions of some of these teams like Houston, Cincinnati, you could have on the list. I think that they are all going to be big time for this conference. Even UCF, I know that they're probably in for a little bit of a rough year, but they did a nice job in the portal, bringing in a bunch of guys that were putting up 14-plus points at their respective schools as well. And I just do take a look at the Big East, and while I do think that you have that clear number one team, I think that this could once again be one of those conferences that gets 7+ teams in the NCAA tournament and just continues to be that gauntlet that we've seen year in and year out when it comes to conference play.
No doubt. And I mean, they got 14 teams. I'm going to predict that all 14 are going to be in the top 100 of the net and top 100 of the KenPom, whatever metric you want to use. So like you said, this is going to be a complete gauntlet. Kansas, Houston, Texas, all will challenge for one seed. You know, Baylor, Kansas State will always be in the mix. And then you got Grant McCasland coming over from Texas Tech. Iowa State's always solid, same with TCU and Jamie Dixon. And it'll be interesting what happens with these newcomers, Cincinnati, BYU, UCF. I think they will have some growing pains, but I still think they're all solid programs that it's going to take, I think, a year to adjust playing this gauntlet of a Big 12 schedule all the way from January into March.
Yep, I think so as well. And when it comes to some of these teams that might not be in the top 4 / the top 5 of the Big 12, are you warming up on anyone in particular? Because the one that I just continue to look at, and the one that I think is going to be able to exceed expectations, is Texas Tech, because I thought that they made one of the best coaching hires in the offseason, Grant McCasland, he and Mark Madsen, who went over to Cal. And those are two guys that they had nice runs in the NIT Final Four. I think that those are two big additions. And with Grant McCasland, just the style that he runs with his North Texas team last year being number 1 in the country with regards to fewest total possessions per game, being a hard-nosed defense, being able to retain some of those good, solid players from the Texas Tech team a season ago while infusing his own talent is going to lead to instant success over at a place at Texas Tech that they know about winning, and they know about having a coach that knows what the heck he's doing on the defensive side of things lead this team to instant success.
Texas Tech has always been one of the teams that I've circled in this offseason, and I thought they did a really good job in the transfer portal, getting Tucson from West Virginia, Darian Williams from Nevada, Warren Washington from Arizona State, Cambridge as well from Arizona State and Oregon. I like that one as well as an under-the-radar team. I think McCasland's a perfect fit, like you said. Texas Tech, Lubbock, they know defense, and Grant McCasland is nothing but that. So it's going to be a great fit. I'm looking at TCU, and I know they lost Mike Miles and Damian Ball, and they had a great run with that group. But I think they did a great job in the portal as well, getting Jameer Nelson Jr., Avery Anderson from Oklahoma State. They got Chuck O'Bannon back, Emmanuel Miller back. I think, once again, Jamie Dixon, he's proven to be really good in the transfer portal over these last 2 years. I think he's got a sneaky group once again in Fort Worth.
Yep, I do think so as well. As joining me on the show, we do have Ryan McIntyre, who does great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. And Ryan, obviously, with regards to the Big 12, there is going to be a lot of great teams with regards to this conference. But when it comes to really the national landscape of college basketball, I know that you and one of my good friends who always joins me on VSiN, Kobe Dan, you're starting up your previews for the college basketball season. And as you've been diving in with regards to your research, are there a few teams that, as you look at them, it can go both ways? Because we always like to highlight the positives, but we always need to take a look at some of these teams that they get a little bit overrated, because you're able to make just as much money finding a team that you love as you are able to find a fade towards the early part of the season. But with regards to some of these teams that you are evaluating, are there a few teams in particular that you take a look at as you've been doing your research process and you're thinking either A, man, they're really flying under the radar and I like them coming into the year, or vice versa, that you're a little bit out on them and you do feel like they might be just a tad bit overrated and might be worth fading towards the beginning part of the season?
You know, Greg, it's funny. Colby and I, we broke down the American Athletic Conference the other day, and it's such a unique year because top of the league features some Conference USA teams. Everybody obviously remembers FAU and the run they made with Dusty May, UAB, North Texas. I highlighted UAB because I think that with Eric Gaines coming back, all those talented junior college guys, Andy Kennedy, we just talked about with Jamie Dixon. Andy Kennedy's been great in the transfer portal. I think that that's a team kind of flying under the radar that could challenge the Owls at the top of the American Athletic Conference. I probably, and I know you said this on your show a couple times, would like to fade probably FAU early because they go from the hunter to the hunted. I think they're just going to take everybody's best shot. I like them in the long term, but early on in November, December, it might be a team that you look to fade with some inflated lines and just stay in that same league. I mean, the Memphis Tigers are one of the more unique teams in terms of, you mentioned it, where it could go either way. I mean, they're still waiting on the waiver, but they got Quinterly, Mills, Jordan Brown, David Jones. I mean, Penny did an unbelievable job in the portal. I'm looking forward to seeing how he meshes these pieces, this talented roster, because top to bottom, this is arguably a top 10 team in the country from a roster standpoint.
And I do think that it's so interesting that you bring up Memphis, because there are some teams right now that, because of the two-time waiver situation, it's still a little bit of a jury's out situation, because I put Memphis at number 2 with regards to my projector or finish out there in the American. I do think that whether or not they have DeAndre Williams, though, that is something that is going to be so impactful as well, because when it comes down to this Memphis team, if they have them in the fold, they're a top 25 team, in my opinion. They're a team that is going to be very, very tough to be able to just contain all that speed, contain all that versatility. If he's out of the fold, they're still going to be a solid team, but I do think that causes for a big impact. And are there a few other teams that you take a look at, much like we are with Memphis, because I think that they're extreme with this case, but it's a little bit of a jury's out situation at this point because we just don't know who is / is not eligible, and it's really hard to evaluate at this point, not knowing who's going to be out there on the floor.
I think you look at the SEC, and there's a lot of unknowns in that league, and I'll look at Chris Beard's group. I think that the Ole Miss Rebels could be boom or bust in year number one. Talented team. You got Brandon Murray, Cisse coming over, Jamarian Sharp from Western Kentucky. So multiple pieces on paper, but you just don't know how they're going to blend. Obviously, you look at Arkansas, they always reload in the transfer portal. Another team, a big year, is Todd Golden's bunch with the Florida Gators. I think on paper they look pretty good. They lose Castleton, but I think they reload and could be a sneaky team in year number one with the guys like Walter Clayton and Tyree Samuel. I think the Gators could be sneaky in the SEC this year.
Yep, I do think that Florida is going to be in for a relatively solid year as well. And I do think that, much like we're talking about the brutality that we're going to be seeing in the Big 12 towards the middle part of the conference, I think we could see that in the SEC as well. Because with the SEC, I'm not sure if you think that there's a Final Four team out there or not, but I really don't. But at the same time, I take a look at the SEC and I see a lot of rock-solid NCAA tournament teams like Mississippi State, Auburn are two teams that I've really warmed up on. And I feel like the middle part of the SEC might be sort of that gauntlet, much like we typically see from the Big 12.
Yeah, biggest mystery team. What are the Kentucky Wildcats going to look like? We've heard nothing but great things from that freshman class. They got Trey Mitchell coming over from West Virginia, Antonio Reeves. But, I mean, it's a lot of unknown. It's Calipari's kind of going back to his roots, riding and rolling with these freshmen, these talented freshmen. So hearing that they're more athletic and they're playing faster without an Oscar Tshiebwe. So looking forward to seeing how that group grows, see if they can do what Calipari's teams have always done with the primarily freshman group base, and that's get better and make a March run.
Yep, and this man gets better and better, even though he's already amazing. That'd be you, Ryan. You do great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. You do great work on the West Virginia front as well. And I know that over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, there's been a lot more Big 12 coverage as well. So let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yes, and I host the Big 12 College Experience where we dive into college football right now. We're going to start previews here for basketball leading up to that November 6th start. College basketball is here, baby, and go follow Colby and I at the College Basketball Experience every single night, previewing every single game, just like yourself, Greg. And, of course, you West Virginia Mountaineer fans, go check out the Ryan and Russ Show, your source for West Virginia sports. And always appreciative to come on and talk hoops with you, my man.
Always great to be able to have Ryan McIntyre aboard. He does amazing work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network and has firsthand experience as to everything that we get in college basketball, as he was on the coaching staff of both West Virginia and South Carolina, and they were able to make some runs to the NCAA tournament. And every single time Ryan joins this podcast, lends amazing insight. So big thanks to Ryan McIntyre for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways to be able to throw those in. First one is my X timeline at GNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. We've only got a few conference previews left. The Big 12, the Big East, the Pac-12, and the SEC. And I do plan on doing the Big East within the next 48 hours. We have called upon our good friend in John Fanta, who does absolutely amazing work. He is Mr. Big East. He is going to be joining me in the next few days to be able to break down that conference. And we're going to be with you guys every single day on this podcast here in the offseason, giving you guys those previews and the news and notes of college basketball to get us set for the season. And then once we get in season, picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. So I appreciate tuning in today, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.